room.
Are we ready? Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Penny Casimir,
Here.
Sandra Bradford,
Here.
Angela Wilcox,
Here.
Mike Shackleton,
Here.
Gavin Newman,
Here.
Barry Altschuler,
Here.
Leah Collister-Lazari.
Here. As in all of our meetings, in spite of the fact that we are Zooming tonight, would we all rise and say the pledge, please? Okay, we don't have a screen sharing, so no one will be, you might want to stop your video. Well, it's fine. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
For anyone watching, we had hoped to have a flag, a flowing flag for everyone to look at, but we're trying to figure this out. So welcome to our very first Zoom board meeting. To the community, you are hopefully viewing a live stream of our meeting in the same manner as you would of any of our other meetings. For public comment purposes, Dr. Harris and I are physically at the district office, but all other board members and administrators are attending the meeting remotely. Typically, a quorum for board members of the board must be physically present to have a regular meeting. And a board member may only vote remotely if they are sick or traveling on business. However, on March 16th, Governor Pritzker suspended a provision to the Open Meetings Act requiring that board members of a public body must be physically present. So during the time of functioning under the disaster proclamation, our meetings will look a bit different, probably like this. Currently, note, we still continue to keep our regular meeting schedule, but if something happens and we deviate from that schedule, it will be noted on the district's website. So with that being said, I'll start with my report. Our last meeting was held on March 17th, the same day as the election. Later that evening, we learned that the community had voted to approve the referendum. So on behalf of the board, I want to thank the community for this vote of support and want you to know how seriously we take this responsibility. We pledge to be good stewards of the community's funds, and we'll be having the first discussion of many later this evening to begin the process of making needed improvements to our buildings. Again, thank you for your support and to all that helped in this effort. To the board, a little report here. I've had a number of meetings related to the changes in our education system in our state and our country, everything from board presidents from other districts. The IASB had something. I even attended a webinar sponsored by Board Docs related to the Open Meetings Act and functioning within, with Zoom and similar types of software. Also attended a webinar related to finance hosted by Franzik, our attorneys. So there's a lot of interesting information out there. We're getting some emails inviting us to these things, so I encourage you, if you're interested in any of them, to partake because it is interesting information. So as far as public comment goes, that is our next thing on our agenda. Tonight we're trying something different. As I mentioned earlier, Dr. Harris and I are here in the office. He's in another room, so we're not providing feedback for one another. Electronically, not personally. And we wanted to make sure someone was here in case someone wanted to address the board in person. However, as noted in the meeting notice and board communication, we'll open public comment up again at the end of the meeting in order to read any emails that have come in and noted as public comment. And I have some of those. So at the end of the meeting, we'll open up and then I'll read some of those to the board. The room is empty other than staff. And so there's no one here for public comment. So I think that we should just move along and let Dr. Harris start his report.
All right, very good. Thank you, Penny. I am going to do a screen share here. I hope we're going to find out. Let's see if I can get to it. Hold on. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
All right,
Yeah.
very good. I want to walk through a few things here this evening. We do have some guests on here, and you're going to find out here, board members, shortly who these guests are. Hold on one second. Trying to navigate my own screen here. It looks different. All right. I'd like to start tonight, though, by first recognizing our National Merit finalists. If the board remembers, at a previous board meeting a couple months ago, we had our National Merit semifinalists there, and we recognized them. Now we have their officially moved to finalists. They've checked all the boxes, and these are the individual students, seniors at Barrington High School. And again, I think I made this mention, and Steve might have as well. This is a significantly large number of National Merit finalists. Typically, we have 4, 5, 6. This year, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 that will be eligible for that recognition, and a full ride scholarship typically is involved to a college that they choose to pursue. So just outstanding accomplishment. We continue to be very proud of our students at Barrington High School, and especially these 10 that have reached that level. So congratulations to all of those students. On the line here tonight, Sarah Lager, who is already been approved by the board at our last board meeting, but that was in the middle of the transition into virtual, scenario when the governor put forth his first kind of stay-at-home provision. And so Sarah is with us tonight here virtually as our new Director of Fiscal Services. And again, just a little bit of information about her. And Sarah, I'll give you a minute here to any comments that you may have briefly. A little bit of her background. She has a Master of Science from Northern Illinois University, and you'll see her education licenses, specifically this Chief School Business Official, which she'll be working in that role here in 2020. Also had her bachelor's degree from Illinois State. So congratulations to Sarah. Now, I don't have my whole screen up here right now. I'm trying to navigate this a little bit. Trying to figure this out. It's not working like it has before for me, as usual. Sarah, do you want to go ahead and just share some comments, or I'll let Dave introduce and share as well. Sarah?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to join the Barrington team, and I look forward to meeting each one of you in person, hopefully soon. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Sarah, and I appreciate you joining us here this evening.
Absolutely.
Dave, any other comments before I move on?
If you ask around to other business officials in the area, who is the best person to try and hire as a Director of Fiscal Services, every person said, oh, you should talk with Sarah Lager. And I did, and I'm very excited that she's here. She's amazing, and will continue with excellent work in the business office, and very happy she's here. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
All right, so she'll be starting July 1st, and we're looking forward to having you as part of our admin team here in 220. Also tonight on the personnel report for board consideration is Jen Ellett. Just a little bit of her background. She is recommended tonight to be the new assistant principal at Prairie Campus. Travis is on here as well, and I'm going to let him share in a couple minutes, but a little bit about her professional background. Jen has her endorsement in educational leadership from Aurora University, master's degree from National Louis, and did her original bachelor's degree as a teacher from Western Illinois University in special education. So Travis, any comments here about Jen?
Yes, thank you, Brian. Good evening, everyone. Prairie Campus is excited to have Jen come aboard. She has over 15 years of special education experience, and with the last 4 being as a special education administrator. She's going to be a great addition to Prairie, and we are excited for her to begin in July.
All right. Thank you, Travis. Jen, I'm going to wait until the board takes the action, then I'll ask you to share just a couple thoughts at that time after the board action occurs, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. And unless there's any other questions, that concludes my superintendent's report for this evening.
Are there any questions for Brian? Okay, I know Brian has a lot of things to fill us in on later, so.
Yes, I do.
Okay, information reports. Any question on the information reports we've received tonight? I also wanted to ask the board, a couple weeks ago in our in Brian's weekly update, we had a draft of a late start survey. If you remember last year when we were provided the results of the survey, we thought that perhaps some of the questions had become a little stale, and we thought we could get better data by asking different questions. And so we received, it was in Brian's update dated March 20th. So if you haven't looked at that, take a look at that, because Brian, when are you planning to launch that survey?
Well, we probably are not going to do the survey now, and we're going to be talking about that here this evening. If we do, John and I will, keep the board updated. Obviously with our change in scenario, a lot of our survey data, as long as all of our testing has been postponed and put on hold. It may not be in our best interest right now to have a data point that may not reflect and be consistent with our other data points. So we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. Okay.
Sounds good. Okay, then don't go back and look at that yet.
Not yet.
How about board committee reports?
I can speak on behalf of the facilities committee. We met last week. You will see soon a couple motions. One has to do with the Huff flooring project. Just to be very clear, we have a separate 2020 summer projects list for you. This is going to happen this summer, but this is not part of that list for you. The Huff project, the reason we took it on this summer is because the PTO of Huff has offered to pay 50% of the cost of the floor remodel. And as a result, we decided it was too good to pass that up. And we have money still in the existing O&M budget that we're going to use. So I'm just explaining why Huff is going to be a separate motion. But then you also have an extensive list of the summer projects. The projects come out to approximately, I'm not making the motion, but $2.3 million, with the total being $2.6 million when you include 10% for A&E and 10% for contingencies. So, and 2.6 is actually below what we originally budgeted. I want to add that the reason we came under budget is because of some excellent work by our facilities committee in terms of getting very, very good proposals. But additionally, we have some extra money coming back in. Number one, the Lions PTO is donating part of the playground project to the tune of about $143,000. And we also got a grant for the Sunny Hill bathroom. We were adding a bathroom to the bottom, the basement floor of Sunny Hill. And we got a grant, I believe that's through the state of Illinois, for $50,000. So that allowed us to come under budget. So we have a summer projects a proposal that we can go over at the current time. And then the other thing I just want to mention, at the meeting, we also started thinking about 2021 projects. And I just add that because we're trying to move the timeline up just a little bit and not make a proposal this late in the year next year. We're trying to move it up a little bit because we may be able to get better numbers by getting people, by getting the individuals kind of in the game earlier. We're hoping that the bids might come in a little lower. So we're going to try and move things up just a little bit time-wise. We're still debating what our time frame is going to be, but we did look initially at some preliminary summer projects.
Thanks. Any other committee reports?
Hey, Penny, Finance met today. Two things we're actually going to discuss a little bit later. One is the Barrington Transportation Company contract in lieu of school not being in service. And then the second, I don't know if we're going to dive into about within the referendum conversation, is engaging a financial advisor and bond counsel as we continue to navigate this path.
Thank you. And the bond, both of those topics are going to be discussed tonight.
Perfect.
Penny, I had one small report. Resource allocation met yesterday, and we reviewed just under 10 proposals. So some of them we've already talked about as a board, and they'll be implemented using the, oh my gosh, what's it called? The contingency that we have in place already. So just stay tuned. We'll continue to, the administration will continue to evaluate them and bring forward any others that they might want us to discuss.
Thanks. Anybody else? Okay. Oops, I muted myself. Sorry about that. Moving right along. Let's move on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So
This is
moved.
Sandra,
It's
or
Barry
second.
speaking.
Sandra
Thank you.
second, Barry's first.
Okay, thank you.
Included in tonight's consent agenda are minutes open and closed from March 17th, 2020, as well as a revised personnel report. Are there any questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Sandra Bradford,
Yes.
Penny Casimir,
Yes.
Gavin Newman,
Yes.
Leah Collister-Lazari,
Yes.
Mike Shackleton,
Yes.
Angela Wilcox,
Yes.
Barry Altshuler.
Yes.
Okay, so a formal welcome to both Sarah and Jen on behalf of the board. We wish we could be here together with you, but that time will come. So welcome to our district.
So Jen, before you, go ahead and do any comments you have about joining the 220 team.
Sure, I couldn't be more thrilled. Everyone that I've met throughout this process, from central office administration, building administration, parents, students, and staff, has just been nothing short of amazing. So I'm just looking forward to continuing to foster those relationships, and just thrilled to be part of the Perry team. I'm really excited. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and welcome. You know, Penny, I also have Jim Alfs on the line here. Jim's here for the other action item we got coming up, but Jim was also on the personnel report tonight, and I just want to comment briefly and about that as well. Jim was recommended and now officially approved to shift roles in the district, moving from the Huff principalship over to Station. And Jim, congratulations, and any thoughts from your perspective you'd like to share with the board and the community?
Well, I would just simply say I'm humbled and honored to be the principal at Station Middle School. It's kind of like coming home. 16 years ago, I started there in the summer of 2004. And as I look at the screen, I know, Brian, I have something in common with you, and I have something in common with Craig. We were all assistant principals at one time at Station Middle School. So it's a great school. I'm looking forward to it. I'm leaving a wonderful school in Huff Street, and but I couldn't be happier. So thank you for the offer, and I really look forward to getting back together with people, to be perfectly honest with you. So,
well, thank you, Jim.
We agree on that.
And starting tomorrow, we will begin the work with both the Huff parents and staff, and build a profile for the next principal at Huff, and hopefully be bringing a recommendation for the board's consideration within the next couple months. Thank you, Penny.
Thanks. Okay, we have a few more action items here. Is there a motion to approve the Huff Street flooring replacement proposal as presented?
Gavin, so moved.
Leah, second.
Okay. Barry did a really nice job of kind of setting this up for us. Is there anything else that the facilities committee or Dave would like to share with us on this?
Yeah, I agree. Barry did a great job. Dave, anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, I would really like to thank the PTO at school for their support and commitment to the school and the district and their generosity and the entire Huff community for supporting this and making it possible for us to be able to do this. So thank you to the Huff Street families and community.
Okay, are there any questions from the board? I guess I wanted to just point out one thing. In Brian's, attached to Brian's weekly update was a memo related to cooperative pricing and purchasing that applied to the flooring, and it also applies to the next action item, some of the projects on the summer project list. So I just, in case you were wondering why that was there, that's why it was there. So I'm just going to make sure. I'm going to ask one more time. Are there any other questions or comments about the Huff flooring?
Penny, just for clarification, the flooring though is not with the cooperative, is that right? Or is this Consolidated Chicago part of the cooperative?
I'm going to let Dave answer that.
Okay, great.
Yes, yeah. So this is a purchase through the cooperative. So
okay.
and Consolidated Flooring is using the cooperative bid in order to procure the product and do the installation.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, Janine, roll call, please.
Penny Casimir,
Yes.
Gavin Newman,
Yes.
Leah Collister-Lazari,
Yes.
Mike Shackleton,
Yes.
Angela Wilcox,
Yes.
Barry Altshuler,
Yes.
Sandra Bradford.
Yes.
Just one more time, thank you to the Huff PTO and the Huff families for helping to support that purchase. Okay, is there a motion to approve the 2020 summer projects as presented?
So moved.
Second, it's Barry.
Okay. Discussion. Is there someone from facilities want to, again, Barry set this up very nicely. Anything you'd like to add or before we go to questions?
I would just like to thank, Barry and Mike and Nicole and Dave for putting together quite a bit of work to get the summer projects ready here. We've had these discussions several times. We shared it with the board back, I think it was before the first of the year, back in December, to ask for the approval to go out and get the bids ready. And we came in under budget, and we're happy to see that. So Dave, anything else you'd like to add?
I think this list of projects is a great list that is the product of input from our building principals, from our custodial maintenance and grounds team. This is Nicole's first pass with us in organizing the summer projects, and she worked very hard to try and make sure that we had appropriate project scopes and that we're able to get a good package of prices and recommendations for the board. So we talked about these quite a bit at the facilities committee meeting. I think it was a great conversation, and we're excited to be able to present these. And if approved, we will begin to evaluate while the schools are closed for students right now. There may be a couple small things that we might be able to get done over the next several weeks. There's a couple of very small projects that would be finished with our maintenance team that we might look at being able to do. And we'll be excited to have contractors lined up and ready to go to get this done for when staff and students return.
Are there any questions?
So I had a quick question, Penny. I know we talked in the past about specifically some of the fencing that was going to be put in around the admin center. And it looks as if that now has been lumped into a paving quote, which I thought was kind of interesting. But can someone comment on that?
Yeah, Nicole, could you talk a little bit about why that is included there in terms of the bid process?
Sure. So we included fencing as part of the paving project because we're also doing paving work at the admin building. So in order to leverage the best pricing for installation of the fencing, it made sense to put it in with the rest of the paving and do them both at the same time in the same bid.
Okay, well, I've stated in the past that I think that's a large expense for a fence around the admin center. So I'm personally not supportive of that 73,000 as within the summer project.
So that actually was the estimate for the fencing as part of the bid, the breakdown. It came back significantly less. It actually came back just over 40,000 for the fencing itself.
I continue to be unsupportive of 40,000 I mean, we've spent a tremendous amount of money on that facility in the last 12 months. And I think it's in really good shape. So that's just my opinion.
Brian, I don't know if you want to comment on this or not, but you know, I can just say that this is a safety matter as we continue to have students that are cutting through during you know, on their walk to, primarily bigger issues on their way to school in the morning. But that is one of the issues. And Craig, I know we've talked to safety and security about this as well. I don't know if you want to chime in on that relative to our emergency responders request and guidance around having a location for emergency responses.
Yeah, we have continuously worked with our students, primarily the high school students, trying to just reorient them to walk around the property and not cut through the back of the property. We address that whenever we see it happening. I can tell you that despite our efforts, it is an ongoing. It's a constant thing that we are talking with our students, trying to redirect them, and we believe fencing would help in that regard. We have that blind corner. As many of you know, if you've driven around the building to the back parking lot, it's a solid brick wall until you reach that point. And there are students that navigate that daily. We do have students that decide to purchase parking or look for parking in the neighborhoods back behind our facility. So I believe that's what Dave was referring to. In addition, to help secure this building as our emergency operations center, the advice was that if we could also have fencing that would help us in those times, that would be an enhancement to what we have if we needed to control access to our property in order to really facilitate those discussions and access to our site. Because we're going to use this building, specifically one of the conference rooms is equipped to serve as that center for the district if we needed to go into that mode as a district.
Yeah, I would just say that anytime you move into a new location, and I understand your concern, Gavin, there are some unforeseen things that we didn't realize until we got in here. And it's just one of those things that appeared to us, you know, even with our attempts to try and provide a better safety scenario for our students. You know, and like I said, I would hate to, you know, miss that opportunity and then have an unfortunate situation play out. So that's the thinking behind it. And then we obviously took the route of combining it with another bid pack to be able to get the cost down as much as we possibly could.
If the board directs us to exclude that or chooses to not award that, we can carve that out of the bid award as well.
Are there other questions?
This is Sandra. Just one other question. So were the students not cutting through before? Is this a new phenomenon because we now own the admin center and people weren't doing it before because it wasn't our property?
Go ahead, Craig, if you, I'll comment as well.
I believe they were cutting through the property. I think those spaces have existed in the past. I think the fact that there are students that we may be more mindful of it and more diligent of trying to, you know, address and try to help them make better decisions as far as not cutting through that driveway space. I don't believe it's a new thing.
On the other hand, I think it's increased because they know this is our property. They know it's 220 property, so they just believe it's way more convenient. I did talk with the previous facility, the guy next door who runs the Pepsi facility, and he said, yeah, it was an ongoing problem, but he goes, I see a lot more kids doing it now since you guys own it. He said, I've noticed it. He said it was always a little bit of a challenge for it, so it was usually a few kids. He said, I see a lot of them now. He said to me, good luck. I said, well, we're looking for solutions on how to deal with it.
Well, Brian, wouldn't it just be a cheaper alternative to have people slow down as they're driving down that portion of the property versus spending $40,000 on a fence?
No doubt about it. We have visitors to this facility a lot. I think the people who work here are very aware of it. But again, it's a what if scenario. It's a safety and security related item. And we just believe that we want to exhaust, every option to make sure we don't have that issue. So that's why we believe this is the appropriate solution for that.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Where exactly does the fence go? This is Leah. Is it just along the one side or is it bigger? Just to remind us.
It runs along the perimeter of the property adjacent to the parking spaces and will continue around just the back portion. So just those two sides, not the entire property.
So if they were to continue to cut through, they would be walking still along the building there, along that road. If
They wouldn't
decided-
be able to access the parking lot from the side adjacent to their parking spaces from the rear of the parking lot. And then there's a queue line that follows the drive from that corner of the fencing all the way down to the end of the driveway, to the end of the building.
Any other questions?
Have we thought about a stop sign there before at the end of the building?
We have the, is it a yield sign? I'm trying to remember, I see it every day. Is it yield or caution? I forget. There as well, but it's coming the other way. It's going to the south. Coming in is the blind corner. So, I mean, any and all of these things would be good solutions. It's a combination of things.
I'm just wondering if we should do it anyway, the stop sign.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion on the table. Janine, roll call, please. You're muted, Janine.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. Gavin Newman,
No.
Leah Collister-Lazari,
Yes.
Mike Shackleton,
I think Mike dropped. So Mike technically left the meeting. Sorry.
okay, that's fine, 7:48, I'll mark that.
It was earlier than that, but we'll get you the right time.
Okay. Angela Wilcox,
Yes.
Barry Altshuler,
Yes.
Sandra Bradford,
Yes.
Penny Casimir,
Yes. Motion passes.
Mike texted me, he dropped, he's trying to get back in. I don't see it over here on the side.
It might be in, Janine might be the only one that can see it if she's the host.
Janine, let him in if you can.
Yeah, I don't have a waiting room for this meeting.
I don't either.
Brian, I think you're the host.
I know he's not, I don't see it coming up.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's the host and he's not waiting, or Brian is the host, but I don't see Mike anywhere either.
No, I don't either. I'm looking.
He may have gone into the wrong meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, while
I'll try to text him a new link.
next on, we're going to move our discussion items around a little bit and let our SEL update go first. Maybe that'll give Mike a little time to rejoin us as well. So I'll turn that over to the administration.
Okay. Thank you, for this opportunity to get an update on the social emotional learning that work that we've been doing in the district. In a minute, John's going to share his screen and begin a short presentation. There was a memo attached to the board agenda as well, providing some of the updates. This committee continues to do amazing work, and we wanted to provide an update to the board on some of the details. So John, as soon as you are ready, looks like he's getting there. It's all yours.
Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Well, thank you all so much for allowing us to provide this short update, and it will be short. So love to have any questions. We will be providing a lengthier update in the summer as we normally do. But we thought, given the amount of work that we've done this year, we wanted to give you a quick update, especially in some of the items we briefed you on earlier in the fall, especially related to the personalized learner profile and things that we're doing to collect data. So with that, I'll jump right in and just say, wanted to give you sort of a refresher on the data collection heretofore related to SEL. We started collecting data through the Panorama Student Survey Instrument in 2018, grades 3 through 11. Continued that in the spring of 2019. We were able to do grades 3 through 12 at that point as well. And then we pivoted, as you may recall, from the Panorama Student Survey Instrument to the ECRIS Student Survey, and that was done in grades 3 through 12 as well. You may recall that we did that because we felt it was a better instrument. They worked with us, and we were also able to do it within our ECRA platform, the ECRIS platform that ECRA provides us. And we were also able to ask a couple really critical questions, like we asked 3 qualitative questions. Simply, how do you describe yourself as a learner? What are your 3 academic goals for the year, and what are 3 personal goals that you have for the year? And I'll speak to that later on in the discussion. But those have really garnered us some really incredible information on the students, allowed us to make some new connections with kids, and we're learning a lot. There's a lot we still don't know, but we're learning a lot, and this is able to make new connections with kids. Unfortunately, this year we were planning on doing a second administration of that ECRIS student survey. It looks like with this current pandemic crisis we're in the midst of, we will not be able to do that. And that's very similar to what we will be doing with all of our state and local testing as well, is that we won't be able to do that with the exception of AP, it looks like most of our state testing. So we're going to follow suit and not offer an SEL data point that probably isn't all that reliable given the current state of affairs. So what I want to do now is talk to you a little bit about some of the advantages that we've had in collecting this new SEL survey data along with the qualitative data. We've been able to link the data right into the ECRIS Personalized Learner Profile, which you're going to see here in a moment. And what it does is it gives us a look at students in a totally different way than what we've been able to look at before, in terms of being able to see, before we were able to see, of course, their academic behavior, attendance, all the things that we normally see testing. But this gives us kind of a glimpse into how the students are doing and what their needs are. All right, from a personal level. In addition, it's really, we're learning a lot as a system in terms of how we can build social emotional supports at the RTI, or what used to be RTI is now MTSS, and within the school student support teams at the buildings. We're learning a lot as to how we can help kids, and that some of the interventions that we've designed, like say in academics or behavior, we're learning we can really our best accomplish through an SEL intervention, which is great because then we can allow students to stay in class longer and be part of the academic environment, which has been wonderful. Again, we're learning on that, but it's been exciting. And then finally, one of the things it's really taught us as a staff is how to use data responsibly. The SEL survey instrument is, as the SEL committee, who I know many are tuning in tonight, you know, they hear me say all the time that the SEL survey might be the first reason you ask a question about a student, but it should never be the last question you ask about a student. In other words, it should prompt a whole bunch of other questions if a red flag goes up, but it should never be the sole reason you make a decision about an intervention or something like that for a student. But it's been great in helping us to identify students and some of their needs, even ones that aren't very major, but just little things that we can help them. So what I want to do is show you here is this is on the left of your screen, the old ECRIS personalized learner profiles on the left, and that's what you normally see, and that's what a traditional practitioner would see. And it's typical. You got your coursework, your assessment, your GPA, attendance. Yeah, that's the normal stuff. What we've done is moved over to the stuff at the top is our personal statement, our goals, and our social emotional. So we felt it was really critical not only to have this information on the PLP, but it also sends a message of what we convey first. And that's that the health and well-being of our students is first, and then our academics and behavior flow from that. So we felt not just that the information was important to the staff, but also where we put it on the PLP. And this is also just another view of that, a little zoomed in. This is an actual student, although obviously the student's name is not on there, but this is actual information from a student in Barrington 220. This was used at a training that we had in late fall this year. So this is the actual information that teachers and certified staff are getting. They log in and how to log in, but you can see the goal statement. You can see that the different goal, or the personal statement, you can see some of the different goals. And what we're hearing from the practitioners is when they read over these goals, it's like, I had no idea Billy or Susie was interested in basketball. That's a new conversation or a new touch point with that child. So it's really been interesting. Again, like I said, we're learning a lot from this. And again, now we have our new SEL measures. And I want you to take a look at that, what they call that donut graph. That has the 3 major SEL indicator areas that we're measuring: responsible decision-making, self-regulation, and social relationships. And then it gives an overall score out of 5. Okay, so each one of those are out of 5, and then it's an overall score. And you'll see we still have the old SEL data in there because that was good information. And as we pivot and transition more to the ECRIS one, that information will kind of flow to the background. But again, all this is in the child's history. So if you want to see how a child is progressing, the great thing is we'll have this over time as well. Okay. Finally, let's talk about just some of the benefits of personalized SEL, and that's what we're really excited about. It's really helping us to increase our understanding of what our students actually need from an emotional standpoint or a wellness standpoint in the classroom. It's allowing us to personalize our supports. So as we begin to develop and harvest more supports from a building and district perspective, it's helping us to teach each other how to best work with students who have particular SEL profiles. And finally, it's helping us to personalize our multi-tiered system of supports, our RTI system. What I think is most exciting is, forever since I've been in education, we've talked about how to maximize instructional time. And what we're learning is that when we've talked about differentiation in education, this is one of the most exciting ways that we're learning, is that when we differentiate in terms of the SEL needs of the students, we're able to maintain, for the most part, our core academic instruction. So rather than differentiating and creating new instructional goals within the classroom, what we're really finding is true differentiation is happening from an SEL standpoint when we can do that, when we know the profile of the students, and we're able to meet their needs while still moving the whole class forward with instruction. So it's really exciting, and we're able to maximize our instructional time better the more we learn about this. We've also got some really interesting things that we're doing on the aggregate level. So what you saw earlier was that sort of personalized student level, but we're also being able to look at new pieces of data side by side. So with SEL data in conjunction with attendance, behavior, and achievement. I just want to show you a little bit about how that looks. And once we start to look at this data and sort of dig into it a little more, to allow us to create district and building goals in these areas and then track their progress. So that's what's exciting too. So you can see here we've got SEL scores related to attendance. You know, is there a correlation between a student's overall sense of well-being and their attendance? Well, we see that there is a bit of one. So how can we then be able to use this as a leading indicator as we see students with these different, with a profile as you see up here? All right. Additionally, we see student SEL scores, and then we're able to track that in relation to behavioral outcomes, social relationships, and also dean's office visits. So that's an interesting one too. And what sort of things are we able to do, and can we intervene earlier before a situation becomes more critical? And finally, of course, we're really digging in to see how do our SEL scores match up and align with some of our academic indicators that we've been tracking for years, for decades. And are there things that we can learn about when a student, how we can support students in these different academic areas, and also as we move students to new academic areas, like from regular education to high school to AP, are there things that we can do to better support students now that we know specifically what their SEL needs might be? All right. And so we're excited about those, but what I would say I'm really excited about is the next frontier about SEL and data tracking. If it sounds like I'm excited, and Brian has seen me present this before at conferences, this really is exciting, because imagine this. When I talked about maximizing instructional time, imagine a teacher walking in the fall, having their class list, which they're going to have, which they do every year. But imagine them having that donut thing on the right here, but instead you've got a class profile, and you can break that class profile into different strengths within the class. So you might have 6 students who really struggle with social relationships. Might you be able to plan for them differently when you first start? And so what we're doing is we're hoping that as we learn more about this and we're able to get this as a class level, what I call heat sensors, we will be able to maximize instructional time with the students rather than having to wait the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks it is to get to know the kids. We might know from the outset what our classes' general needs are, how we can plan better for them, and maximize instructional time. And by the way, get to know our kids better, because we're going to have their historical goals, their personal statements, and we're going to be able to get to our teachers who want to know them right away. They're going to be able to get to know them before they even walked in the door. So it's a really exciting, this personalization of education and supporting them and their well-being. So that's what's really exciting. We don't have this yet, but it is in development, and we are really excited because we believe it will be there by the fall. So with that, I want to just close by saying, on behalf of the SEL committee, and I am a small sliver of this committee, the work that these professionals do has just been unparalleled. I oftentimes say I have to get out of their way. So I want to thank them. And I know on behalf of them, they want to thank you for your support, because this is exciting work. Many of them have said that this is transforming their own educational journey because they have such a passion for it. So thank you for the support. And I'll stop and say, what questions might you have for me?
Questions from the board? Well, I'll just say that when you first brought this to us, I don't remember how long, a year ago or so, it was hard to imagine how it might also impact instruction in some of the ways that you've described. So I think we always talk about trying to educate the whole students and not just pieces of them, and not doing it in silos either. And I think that this is an umbrella that's going to really hopefully not an umbrella, let's call it a safety net, that's going to catch anyone from falling through the cracks as they may have in the past. So I'm excited to see what happens a year from now and a year after that too, after you really start building the data.
Yeah, that's a great point, Penny. And what we're also doing is trying to call the information from the staff. So we're really, instead of buying a curriculum, we're utilizing the best practices from our staff and then pushing them out and making it more of a shared collaborative process to develop supports for students as well, based on the data. So we're excited about it. Thank you.
I have a question. It's really interesting. You were talking about differentiating SEL instead of differentiating how the instruction is and how that would all fall in place. And I'm just curious what an example of that would be in a more obvious way.
Yeah. Somebody's right.
That's a fair question. I don't know.
Yeah, no, somebody's writing on the screen and it wasn't.
That's kind of.
So, that's a great, so I'll give you like a really, really simple example, Leah. So a child that struggles with, sort of staying on task. All right. Maybe has not ADD or something like that, but just a lot of energy, well, that'll show up actually, believe it or not, on the SEL survey and a lot of times. And so what we'll be able to do is say, well, should we have some BOSU balls or something like that for them to sit on, bounce on? And we don't have to change the instruction. We're just changing the environment in which that child learns. And if we know that walking in, sometimes that's all we need. And that's a simple example, but there's a whole host of other ones where, sometimes the child, depending on what the lesson is, the group work might not be the best avenue for them. Their best place might be individual first and then into group work. All right. And those are things that we learn from the SEL survey and from the personal statements. And so it's just helping us to learn more about the kids so that when we craft lessons, when our teachers, I should say, craft lessons, they do it with the needs of the students who are sitting right in front of them.
That's exciting. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is Sandra. I was just going to also comment that I just love the enthusiasm, and I'll make sure that everybody, I believe it says thanks on the screen.
Say that, yes.
Thanks to you and the committee. I'm sure you're a bit larger than just a sliver of that committee, but I really appreciate all the work, and I love hearing the stories about how you're using the data to change those individuals and what they're working on. Love it.
Thanks,
and
Sandra.
John, it's Mike, and I'm just learning how to use this new technology. So that was my writing up there, and I just want to say thank you for the work you're all doing.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that.
Good to know we didn't have a Zoom bomber.
Exactly.
No bomber.
Yeah, it looked like you were going to say something. I don't want to cut you off. Are you good?
No, I just wanted to say thanks to John. This is awesome stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I see Beth sitting down there. I do want to give her props. She's my partner in crime on this. She co-leads all of this work. So she's a wonderful partner in all this. So thank you, Beth. You'd love to have me sit up here and do this, but thank you.
Well, more to come. Any other questions or comments?
Leadership too.
I'll just have one summary statement. I do want to thank John and the SEL committee. I gave John this task a couple of years ago, and with not much, guidance other than we got to figure this out. And I think we're well on that journey. I can share with the board, we are way out in front of this compared to our peers, not only regionally, but across the country. And, I think our kids are going to benefit. That's the bottom line. We got really good during the No Child Left Behind era of disaggregating academic data and behavioral data, but we never could get our head around how to do this. And I believe, this is going to certainly square up and make our teachers even better on behalf of our kids. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much to John and your team and Beth. This is important work. We prioritize SEL every year as one of our board goals. So thank you for fighting the good fight for us.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, our next discussion item is Brian. COVID-19 and e-learning update.
Yes. All right. I am going to try and launch my screen back up here where I'm going to see what will happen. All right, hold on. My screen share. I did it once. I'm going to try to do it again. Here we go. Okay. I wanted to, take this opportunity tonight to walk through a lot of significant scenarios that are playing out across our district. As the board is aware, when we had the initial closure before spring break, we had about 4 days, that we closed school. And I can, certainly want to thank our teachers for the great work they did during that time frame. Then we had spring break. This past week, when the reality became across the district that this closure was going to be long-term. And when I say long-term, I am not sure how long it's going to last. As of right now, Governor Pritzker has provided the authority to close schools through April 30th. He has not, taken any further at this point. However, as a staff here in 220, we are preparing for the remainder of the year. I think if you pay attention to what's going on in the environment around us, I think it will be very short-sighted to think that we will be returning anytime this school year between now and June 1st, back to what we knew as the normal school day in our school district. Even if we do get the chance between now and the end of the school year to return, some things are going to be significantly different. And we know that. And I want to talk through some of the things that have changed in these 3 weeks since we've had a board meeting. I have been sharing a lot of this information with the board over the last 3 weeks. However, it is extremely fluid. And we have new and difficult challenges each and every day. So I want to step through this. And board members, you can see the 5 categories here that I'm going to spend a little time on, just sharing some of the details at a high level. If you have questions, just keep them to the end. I might answer your question as I'm going along here. And certainly I want to open this up for discussion at that point. And again, you'll see the 5 different areas here. And before I jump into this, I do want to say a special thank you to the exec council team. I have told them this 3 weeks ago, and I'll say it again tonight here publicly. I am blessed as superintendent to have an outstanding, talented team that has made this reality, for our students and our staff in our district. When you completely change the operational functioning of this entire school district from a 12 different locations to a stay-at-home virtual environment, that's pretty significant. We had done a lot of pre-planning, but not prepared to be doing this over a long period of time, which we are now engaged in. So I just want to say thank you to all my assistant superintendents and to the administrative team in the district for the work they're currently doing, and obviously what's on the horizon. So let's look at each one of these here areas, and I want to jump into a little bit of detail. The first thing is learning and teaching. And, we've pivoted. We had done some blended learning environments. We had provided, opportunities for our kids to use their devices in and outside of the classroom periodically over the last 7 years since we had the One to World initiative put into place. But what's happening here in the last 3 weeks is very different, very, very different. And we are on a journey to continue to institute this. So we've got 2 things going on. First of all, synchronous instruction. That means direct face-to-face, which primarily when we have kids attending the school facilities, that's the dominant, method of providing instruction. Kids are in the classroom, teachers are teaching, kids are engaged. That's the typical classroom environment. What we've done over the last 3 weeks, we've started to use other tools. We had used these situationally, I would, share at each level, but not on a daily basis in a very fluid format. Zoom is the tool we're using here tonight for this board meeting. Every teacher in our district now and several of our support staff have a Zoom account. I want to thank Matt and his team for working hard, and also for the learning and teaching staff with John to making this a reality. I'll talk about some of the details here in a few minutes, what's happened with the use of Zoom. That is going to provide us the opportunity to have more of that face-to-face type of instruction in this environment. We did not have this 3 weeks ago. We didn't have this available to our teachers. And now today, we had several thousand Zoom meetings going on instructionally with teachers just today, and Tuesday, April 7th, across the district, to continue that face-to-face instruction. Google Hangout is another very popular tool that a lot of our teachers had used previously, especially those teaching the blended classes, and some of those that were doing some virtual remotes. But again, that's a tool we're using. And then the good old-fashioned phone call. We've had that going on, where, whether it's a group call or whether it's an individual call, we've had a high percentage of our students engage. We still have had a few students not engage. And so we've had to take every method possible to be able to have that direct face-to-face. I put etc. there because I know there's some other tools being used situationally, but these are the 3 main ways that we're providing this type of instruction. Asynchronous instruction, okay? This is where it does not require a direct contact, all right? And the methods we've been using for that is through Schoology at the 6-12 level, and Seesaw and website assignments and website references for the other levels. Seesaw is a very intuitive tool for our youngest learners in the district. Actually, my daughter's a 1st grade teacher in a district nearby. I've actually seen it happening. She shared with me some of the things she was doing personally with the kids. It's outstanding. I've also seen several of our teachers' examples, and Matt shared a couple of those the last time we were together. And we will have more of that information available for the board at a future time. But basically it's a learning management system or a platform that we have in a technology framework to provide assignments, to provide some types of instructions. It may be posting a video on a demonstration in the science lab. It could be different types of things that don't require a face-to-face contact. So teachers are toggling between these two formats over the last few weeks, providing this instruction. And it's going to continue to evolve. I can't say that enough. I've already said it a few times, and and teachers are getting better and better each day to try and determine what's the right method as they start to use these tools that are available to them to provide the instructions for kids. The third thing I want to talk about in this category is grading. The state rules and regs on the remote learning days that was put out by ISB, that the governor enacted his month-long closure for schools, has a very specific statement in it, and every school in the state is expected and required to follow that. And that is, no student will have any negative impact during these remote learning days, meaning nobody's grade can go down, okay, during this time that we're in this mode here in the school district. So, you know, and what's happening is that's going to look a little different at each level. So what we're doing today, and we've been doing it over the last several days, is finalizing some of the details for each level. I'll give you a brief high-level view of what I believe students and families and staff are going to expect here by the end of the week. Is at the K-8 level, it's going to be more in a pass-fail mode, okay? Meaning they're either going to engage and participate and engage in the activities of learning and then get credit accordingly. And at the high school level, it's much different. We are going to provide grades. The initial conversations are around an A, B, or C, no lower than a C, and no student can go down to where they were as of March 13th, which was our last day in regular school environment. So there's a lot of detail behind that. We're working on that final guidance. We're meeting with teachers on that over the next couple days through staff meetings, through our Teachers Association. We're going to be meeting with them and sharing some of the details on that. And then we will be pushing this out to parents and families by the end of the week, explaining in detail some of those provisions when it comes to grades. So the state superintendent and the governor were extremely clear when they enacted these provisions that we currently are working under now, that there would not be negative impact on students because of the, you know, the transition that's going on from the regular school mode to this virtual environment. So very, very important. I can come back to this when I get there. All right, I want to talk a little bit about human resources. Obviously, we're a people of organization. We're around people. And not only we provide instruction to nearly 9,000 students every day, we have over 1,200 regular full-time employees. And so we are an organization of people. So right now, 95% of our staff are working remotely, okay? So they are not on site. And it's probably a little bit higher than that. That was just my ballpark estimate on any given day. I want to talk just a minute about the people that are still on site. Buildings and grounds staff. Our buildings and grounds teams have been on site every single day. I believe our buildings are probably cleaner now and more sparkling than ever before. And I want to thank them for their work. They've just stayed on their regular schedule. We have adjusted some schedules, but basically they're continuing to do the work of the district. I want to thank Dave and Nicole and Elliot for their work with our buildings and grounds team to coordinate that. And we're doing some summer type activities right now in all of our buildings, deferred maintenance issues, doing some painting and stripping and waxing floors, basically stuff that we would never even attempt to start doing until summertime. So we are really taking advantage of this opportunity to use our team in our facilities to upgrade those opportunities in our schools. I also want to have a special shout out to our IT staff. In fact, two of our IT team, Matt and Josh, are on site tonight here in the building. And Penny, they're there with you. And, we couldn't do what I've just got done talking about in the learning and teaching arena without our IT staff. Matt, thank you for your leadership. not only to, to secure some of the tools, including Zoom that we're using tonight, as well as with our teachers, but also the daily support for the hardware, the software, and then the network capabilities to provide continue instruction at the level that we're doing. Also, business office. We do have between 5 to 7 people. When I say business office, that's this campus here, the district office. That's some of our HR team. It's some of our payroll staff. It's account payable staff. While they can do some of this work remotely, it's been situationally. Some of them are here periodically, depending on the information and the projects they're working on any given day. So that function continues to roll. And again, thank you to Dave and Mary for their teams and staff for continuing to work at that level. A couple other notes in the human resources category. We are not using substitute teachers at this time. So if a teacher or a staff member is sick, and we certainly have that, then principals are figuring it out amongst themselves. We might assign a support staff person to provide instruction. Teachers are working in teams, and they might be providing support in that fashion. Asynchronous, approach might be taking place for a day if a particular teacher is not available on any given day, and sick time is continuing to be recorded accordingly. I also want to point out that all staff will be receiving normal compensation during this time. Again, that is not a district choice. That was extremely clear in the governor's and the state superintendent's proclamation on the remote learning days. So we will continue to pay all of our staff as if school was in session. Now, they may be doing work differently, as I've already explained in a couple of these categories, but we are certainly finding tasks and keeping staff engaged. But I will say this, our staff that are 95% of them working remotely, stay-at-home provision, it's tough for them too. They have their own kids at home. They have their own challenges within their own personal living space. It's one of the reasons why we aren't just following a 8-period day at the secondary level or providing that 6.5 hours of instruction like we do at the elementary level. Our staff cannot physically do that. They have different scenarios as well. They're not coming to work. They're working differently. And I really appreciate our associations working with us on this and providing, a different type of work pattern. I know our teachers are working late at night when their kids are in bed. They're posting lessons and creating videos and doing things so differently than we've ever done before. So I thank them for that. The other opportunity in all job categories is we're providing staff training. And we're training in all these new tools that all of a sudden are thrust upon us. Some of our support staff that work with kids directly we're taking advantage of that, and we're providing some professional development for them. And then they engage with kids one-on-one as they are able to. They all have iPads as well, so they're able to engage the kids as best we can. And but we are incorporating training. And one of the other things we're going to talk about here in a few minutes is some significant training that we believe we want to take advantage of that have been provided for us in the remote learning proclamation by the state superintendent. So I do want to talk also a few minutes on operations. I already mentioned our facilities. They are technically open every day. We have somebody in the building that receives deliveries. We have people in the building in case a teacher wants to call the principal and come in and set up a time where they need to retrieve maybe a demonstration for a lab environment for different types of materials that they didn't take with them on that last day. We also have kids showing up. We had the elementary principals recently did a great job organizing and distributing the recorders for the music class. So kids could come pick up their recorders and music instruction could continue at that level. The principals worked hard and had a drive-up situation at every elementary building where they stood outside and had all the names on the items and people come up one by one in a social distancing format and picked up those items to continue instruction. Just one example where we do need to have our facilities open. Also related to facilities, food service. We are continuing to providing food service for our students in need and families in need. I want to thank Dave and Leanne Taylor for their work with our food service providers, Quest and Sodexo. to continuing to provide that service. So we are receiving a significant amount of reimbursement for this during this time, not only from the federal and state governments, to continue to feed kids. So our service partners, our vendors here have stepped up to the plate, and I want to thank them as well. And that is going extremely well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the Barrington Children's Charities for their work in providing supplements, especially during spring break, but also continuing the Blessings in the Backpack program in a different way, different than we ever would have ever imagined. So those are being delivered as part of the end of the week food service situation as well. So thank you to all the individuals and Barrington Transportation for helping deliver the food service during this unusual and challenging time. Speaking of transportation, I do want to talk to the board a little bit about transportation. Obviously, we're not running bus routes, and our transportation contract that the board has approved is all based on, we reimburse Barrington Transportation for their service based on routes, and that's the way the contract currently reads. I want to thank Dave for the work he's done in working not only with ISB to continue to figure out a way to how we can continue to compensate and engage Barrington Transportation. It is not finalized yet, and I'll certainly answer any questions or comments from the board in regard to this. We did have a discussion at the Finance Committee meeting earlier today about an option to how to move forward. We will be following up with them to provide options, and we'll hopefully have a revised amendment to that contract so we can continue to engage with our partner there and follow the ISB guidelines for reimbursement as we've always done in the transportation situation. And so I anticipate that coming forward as an amendment to the contract at the next board meeting, and the board members will have the opportunity to talk through that at that time. Communications. I think the board has probably seen, I have done more superintendent communications in the past 3 weeks than I probably do in a typical year. And I will continue to do that on a as needed basis. It appears it's probably going to be weekly at the minimum at this point, as we continue to navigate these things day by day. We will be preparing one at the end of this week. That will be going out to our families' relationship to grades, as well as a few other items we want to share with them. Infinite Campus is also a tool that I know our principals are using, especially when we start talking about special events and how we might be redoing them or postponing them or creating a virtual option for those, things like that. So our principals are using that. I actually used Infinite Campus, as you all know. You probably received the phone call prior to us coming back from spring break to re-engage our families and our students and staff, with this new norm that we're living in here in the short term. I've also been providing video messages to staff, and I will continue to do that. I think that is important that we use all means possible to continue to do that. I did my 220 in less than 2 to all the community last week, and provided some details there, and we'll continue to look for video opportunities to provide messaging. Again, we're all kind of living in that virtual world right now, and we want to take advantage of that tool we have. Next, I want to talk about community relations. I have been participating for the last 3 weeks in village manager calls. All of our members of the BACOG area have village managers. These are people that are in my role in each of the local governments. It's also included staff from Good Shepherd Hospital. It's also included other individuals in the community and leadership roles to try and coordinate emergency management situations. So I want to, make the community aware that we are planning for the unthinkable, and certainly hope we don't have to use some of those plans we're working through right now. But we certainly want to make sure that we're prepared when and if this pandemic, reaches, challenging stages in our community. I also want to thank our hospital and first responders for the work they're doing right now under unforeseen conditions. We actually have made several donations to the Barrington Fire Department as well as Good Shepherd Hospital. We had N95 masks that we gave to Good Shepherd Hospital. We also had rubber gloves and some other things that we had in our nurses' offices. We had it at the high school in our healthcare courses. So we gathered that stuff from across the district and we donated it. We did keep some supply on our hands just for our employees and for emergency situations, but we certainly had enough items that we were able to donate. They had an all call out for that in our community, and we were more than happy to, contribute on, our supplies to help support our community. Penny and I also participated in a BAGCOG meeting last week. This included all of the village presidents, the elected individuals across our community, including Penny as the board president in the school district. We also had a representative from Good Shepherd Hospital on the call. And went through the emergency management planning document that they all have for their villages. And I believe the school district's role in that's going to continue to evolve based on need. I think the main thing that the board should be aware of is our facilities will certainly be prepared if needed to be for healthcare purposes. I have no idea what that means sitting here today. You've seen what's gone on in some of the large urban environments. Our high school and our middle schools with large common spaces and significant parking provide healthcare, options for emergency management situations. So at this point, we have not arranged anything, but it's in the queue in case it's needed. So I will keep the board updated if that continues to play out. I also have been in direct contact with all of our elected officials. I already mentioned the local level. I want to thank Commissioner Morrison from the Cook County, as well as our state legislators. Several of them have reached out to me either by phone call or by voicemail, asking if there's anything they can do to help. I want to thank Representative Morrison from Palatine, as well as Tom Morrison, as well as Representative Mary Edley Allen for reaching out. It's been great of them to do that. I appreciate that and just touching base with all the different groups and asking the school districts what they can do to help. I also had a phone call with Congressman Caston and also talked with both Senator Durbin and Senator Duckworth's offices as well. And in each of those arenas, they called and reached out in a support way. So I certainly appreciate that and had suggestions for all of them, as you can imagine. So, and they've been responsive and certainly going to work hard to help support us. Finally, I wanted to throw some things on here on some next steps. I have no idea how long this is going to last. As I already shared, I find it hard to believe we're going to reopen before now the end of the school year. There's some things we're going to have to pivot pretty significantly for that to happen. But we'll take it week by week right now, and then obviously follow the Governor Pritzker's orders as well if he chooses to extend the statewide closure. I know we're going to have budget impacts, both short-term and long-term. Staff, myself, Dave, and we're very mindful of that. We had a preliminary conversation in Finance Committee this afternoon about some budget impacts. Obviously, our revenue stream is from the state, federal, and local level. And we have to be extremely mindful of what we're doing internally on the expense side when we're become less and less unsure on the revenue side. I have no idea what that looks like sitting here today, but we're going to certainly pay attention to it on a regular basis and keep the board updated on any situations that we foresee, heading our way. Summer school. We are currently convening all of the leadership people and starting to talk about what summer school can look like in the summer of 2020. I can almost guarantee it's not going to be what we thought it was going to be. Okay. That being said, we may have to offer some remediation classes that we've never done in the past based on, some incomplete scenarios at the high school level for high school transcripts. We may have to do some different things at the other levels as well. Certainly this virtual environment is going to be a player in this whole thing. So I will keep the board updated as we move forward what summer school is going to look like. Extended school year for special education students also is probably going to look much different. Again, I have no details sitting here today what that different means other than it's not going to be business as usual. And we will certainly work hard to put that together as we get more information on the needs of kids and what opportunities we'll have available to us at that time. Finally, and then I'm done and I'll turn it over to the board for questions. End of year events. We have a significant amount of celebrations at the end of every school year at every level. And both at all of our elementary schools, at both middle schools, and at the high school. On the screen here, I put graduation from Barrington High School. It's the culminating event for students in our district. It's a major community event. And also prom, which is another huge social event for the students as they, in their junior and senior year at the high school level. Those two events, Steve McWilliams, principal at the high school, and his team, I've asked them to put together options on what this could look like. It may be something we do in the summer. It may be some type of virtual environment. It might look different, is all I'm going to say at this point. We have not canceled anything as of right now. Steve is preparing a list of options for the board for consideration. I hope to have this to the board by the end of this week. We will be talking about those again 2 weeks from now and where we may be headed with these scenarios. Again, like graduation where you put 3,000 people in a room, I don't see that happening by May 29th. I just don't see it. They're looking around us in large professional sports or fine arts venues. They're all postponing way out beyond that date. So we are preparing a list of options for board consideration and discussion in some of these events. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you for listening to some of the things I had to share. I know this is a lot, but we've had a lot going on. And I'll certainly open it up for questions at this point.
Questions from the board? Well, I'll throw one out there. Go back to the grading.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I had remembered at one point hearing that, I think it was the state superintendent saying it would either be a pass or an incomplete. So that's changed, or did I hear that incorrectly?
No, the State Board of Education did not dictate that. They give us significant local control on how to do this. The only thing they dictated is that no student's grade could go down at any level. Okay, so that was the provision or the guideline that was mandatory. After that, it really is local control to do whatever we're allowed to do. Now, almost everybody I've talked to at the K-8 level is heading the path we're heading, where it's kind of pass-fail. If you look at our middle school grades, for example, year over year, over 90% of our students get A's and B's. They do, okay? That's been in place for a long period of time, and almost in a standards-based type of environment. Either the kids are meeting the expectation or we're providing instruction to get them there, okay? We don't have a lot of students that have grades lower than that, okay? And elementary doesn't provide a lot of, grades per se. They provide academic check-ins on report cards with all types of data. So at 4th and 5th grade level, we provide a letter grade, but it's really the information behind everything that's being, supported by the actual progress of the student. High school is a whole different deal, okay? We have to provide a high school transcript. And so that's why the state said, it can be an incomplete. If students just flat out choose not to engage, then that's the option we have, is to do an incomplete, which means they don't get a D or an F. Okay, we will not do that this semester. What we will do is they will not get credit for the course either until they have engaged in learning activities and be able to be assessed. If it's in the summer, maybe in the fall, it could be a whole semester retake of a particular course. It will just depend on the student. I know as of yesterday, we still have a handful of students at the high school level that we have not heard from in 3 weeks. We have been trying every day, but it's difficult, especially for some of our most challenged students. And for some, especially the juniors and seniors, I'll just kind of couch it at that, that may be tuned out right now. And So we are going to leave no stone unturned to try and engage them. So Penny, long answer to a quick question, but I hope that answered it.
Well, I'll just build on that just because you just mentioned that you haven't been able to get in touch or you haven't heard from some students. Safety comes to mind right away. You don't need to tell us exactly how you're going to reach out to them, but I hope that you use all means possible just to make sure that they're actually safe.
We will. Even if we have to do wellness checks with our liaison officer. Steve, I don't think we've gotten there yet, right? But I mean, it's in the conversation, right?
So we haven't sent the liaison officer there yet. We just finished up MP4 grades, which is our checkpoint, our 6-week checkpoint. So we're focusing on seniors right now. The first step is for counselors to reach out to seniors and deans to reach out to seniors. So we're focused on those that haven't been engaged and have not have failing grades, D's or incompletes. I can give you data on that specifically, but going on a bigger picture, we did at the high school, we don't have homerooms. So last week when we came back from spring break, we created something we're calling digital homerooms. So each teacher, each staff member, including myself, we've all been assigned 13 students. And our responsibility is to follow up with them and make sure that that somebody's making contact with them. So for instance, my 13 students, I have a few students that haven't reached out to me yet. So I will be referring them to the dean by the end of the week. So we've got a form that will go to the deans, and then the deans are actually working as problem solvers. So sending things to counselors, and in some instances it might be a technology issue where a student doesn't have internet access or such. We had a couple of those issues that we ran into the first week of distance learning. So we were able to follow up on those. So we've got a plan in place. We're working on it. It isn't easy though, but we're using our resources to the best we can.
To add to that, at the elementary and middle level, where they've got a few less students, I know the principals are taking the lead and actually doing home visits in some circumstances to protect the information of families. Some have been caught in their pajamas when they show up with the parents, but we have been able to locate at those levels any students that were not engaged. So I won't mention any buildings per se, but please be reassured our principals are actually taking that step if necessary to make sure every child has been a check-in with them.
Pajamas are probably more common than not these days. So I'm glad that you're taking those steps. So
again, I want the board to know this is an extremely small amount of students, but obviously probably some that are high risk though.
Other questions or comments from the board?
So
Hey,
Steve,
go ahead, Angela.
I was just going to say, Steve, I think you said you're going to send us how many students you hadn't been able to contact. If you could, that'd be great, just to hear that it's really small. Steve, thank you so much for everything you're doing in the high school. I know our family in particular is benefiting from all of your hard work, and we really appreciate it, as well as all the teachers and Brian and Craig and everyone else. Brian, I just wanted to ask one follow-up question on the grades. I think that I wrote down, you had said no student can go down to where they were on March 13th. I think that I may have written that wrong. Because I talked to you earlier today, a lot of parents are kind of reaching out to board members asking us this question specifically, and I want to be as accurate as possible. Is the response no child can go below where they were on March 3rd? Okay, just want to make sure that
Sorry if I misspoke.
I may have written it down wrong. Just as I wrote it, I was like, I don't know if that's what I should be saying. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that
the state has been explicit on that. They cannot go lower in their grade than they were on March 13th.
Got it.
There may be
only go up.
There may be circumstances. We're going to try to be as descriptive as possible of kind of like where kids were at, as that's like the marker on March 13th. But then moving forward, the level of engagement that kids are involved in. We'll have scenarios where kids may actually demonstrating that they're moving up from their current grade, that they're demonstrating mastery, where maybe on March 13th they were at a C level, but they've been able to improve. So you can't go backwards, but you can improve. And we will have descriptions of kids in different scenarios, hopefully in the guidance later this week.
Yeah.
Craig, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I was asked that question specifically. If a student was close, like a high C, and was working for that B,
yep,
for example, will they have an opportunity still to do that? And I was asked that by a student, actually.
They will, and the teachers will help provide clarity of the path and what's required in order to do that, to give students that opportunity. And then we'll have timelines for the students to then respond and take those steps if they are interested in improving their grades and so forth. So we'll have all of that spelled out. Of course, it's all aligned with ISB's guidance, but we're tailoring it to make sense for the students at the different levels in our district.
Thank you.
Speaking of graduation, before we get off this topic too, I heard, and again, I think the board's aware of this, I'm part of that statewide group that still meets every 2 days, superintendents from around the state, and in this format right here. And we are expecting graduation guidance from ISB coming out. I believe what's going to happen, that there will be some relaxation of some of like those requirements for like 4 years of English and 4 years of PE and things like that. I don't know the details at this point. I'm not on that subcommittee, but I do know that I'm anticipating that by the end of the week. So we will certainly share that as well. And that'll be for every school district in the state. Okay. So there are some, statutory requirements for graduation that's going to be dealt with. And again, I think if they follow their same pattern, they're going to give local levels extreme latitude. If that makes sense.
Hey, Brian, I have a quick question. And I know that the whole team has been working feverishly in this new environment we're all learning to work within. But especially at the primary level, I hear from a lot of folks who discuss with a lot of parents at different schools, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of consistency in the workload at the primary level within a specific grade. I just didn't know if you can comment on that, or as we continue to move forward and kind of understand this virtual learning environment, we anticipate more consistency. But I've been getting a lot of questions about that.
That's a great question, Gavin. And here's the short answer, and I'm going to let John chime in on this, or Craig, in your conversations with elementary staff. All of our teachers were at different points in preparing for this virtual environment, okay? Some of our staff have hit the ground running and have jumped right in and almost created a nice balance between that synchronous and asynchronous environment, as I explained earlier. Some of our staff have really struggled in either one of those two, quite frankly. Some of them are relying totally on one or totally on the other. Truthfully, where I believe we're headed is a balance. And I think some of our staff are at different points on that journey. I do believe in the next few weeks that we're going to you're going to see that gap narrow. I don't want to put a timeline on it. And actually, this kind of queued me up for one of the things I want to talk about, which in this remote learning day provision that ISB provided us, they allowed for 5 staff development days that we've never had before because of exactly what you're talking about right there, where we have significant inconsistencies, whether it's in a particular course at the secondary level or if it's at a grade level, in an elementary school. And so we need professional development time and to be able to do that. We have tentatively chosen a date that we're looking at for next week, one day next week, where we would not have an instructional day for students. It would be a staff development day to work on those exact issues that you're talking about. Because we've already started to see gaps and we're aware of it. Principals are aware of it. Department chairs at the high school are aware of it. And we need time. Right now, teachers have no time to figure this stuff out. And, and that's why we're one of only a very few districts that have not used any of those days. All of the districts around us, they use like 4 days already. They didn't even start their remote learning until, a week, almost over a week into this thing, where we started day one. We started it right away. And so, but now we're kind of hit the wall on some things, and we need a little time to be able to use some professional development. So John and Craig, I'm gonna let you jump in here.
Go ahead, John. You start, I'll add. We've been tag teaming this.
Yeah, all week. Yeah, I would agree with that, everything Brian said, and the only addition I would have is to just say, the phrase I've been using a lot lately has been the Goldilocks zone that we're looking for in this new digital environment, and that's the balance, as Brian said, between synchronous and asynchronous, along with just what is the right amount of work at each grade level and each course level. And as we begin to figure that out, it was relatively easy when we were just trying to maintain instruction. But now that we're trying to actually move instruction forward the last couple weeks, while we're well equipped in the areas of technology and in pedagogy, doing that in a completely digital environment is something that we're quite honestly just learning for the first time at district wide. And so I think our staff are doing a wonderful job in trying to plan and keep up and move our students forward and move all of our classes forward in a really good and meaningful ways. And as Brian said, I think that the use of some professional development opportunities in the next month or so, just a couple of them, will really help our staff recalibrate, find that balance, and begin to move closer to that Goldilocks zone that we're all searching for.
And I would just add, Gavin, that's good feedback for us. I think our initial plan very intentionally was designed that the 2 or 3 first grade teachers, for instance, would be working together within a building. And I think now we're at a readiness state that's good feedback for us now to make sure that first grade across the district is also sharing the lessons and plans across. I'm not sure we were able to do that immediately. We had asked them to work within their building and to plan accordingly. And that's good feedback for us now to take to the group that we're ready for that next step.
Our instructional coaches are also preparing, exemplar lessons that we can share. And again, that's that professional development piece. I think all of our staff are working extremely hard based on their capacity at this point, but we want to try to get more consistency across the board. So Gavin, I hope that answered your question. We're aware of it. We're not there yet, and we're going to need some more time to pull this off, especially if it goes into the month of May. And we may have to use a couple more of those days over the next several weeks if this goes long term to allow staff to provide that high quality, rigorous instruction that our kids and families have been used to.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll add, and then I'll jump off here. But obviously we have kind of 3 calibers of children, right? The overachievers, kind of the middle of the road, and the ones that typically struggle, right? And I worry about the ones that struggle, and they're going to fall further and further behind. Especially since a lot of our community has dual working parents, and they're not able to help out on a day-to-day basis during kind of the instruction level, if you will. So I think as we think about community engagement, making sure people understand what we're doing with the tools we have and the ever-changing environment we're living in, I think would be helpful.
Thank you. Agreed. I think also we've got instructional aides. Some of them are directly involved with their students. As principals start to navigate this over the next week or so, we might be able to reposition some of our instructional aid time to help support some of those students that may not be, engaging to the level that they typically would have in a regular classroom environment. So we'll see. We've got a lot of balls in the air right now and how we might, and some resources we have available to us that we might be able to leverage.
Question, if I might. So thank you for all the work everybody's doing. This is really amazing. I have a little different perspective. I have a sophomore in high school and 2 college kids. And I think that the level of expectation in District 220 is always high, but I think that it's important to keep in mind, and this was in the ISB recommendations, and I'm hearing it from different colleges and different areas, to maybe think about the stress level of these kids, and they've got other things going on. This is crazy times. And, the expectation of a regular class without having good contact with your teacher and still having, as much material might be harder. We keep saying to our kids, this is a different time. This is not a normal year. You're going to, keep learning and doing things, but it's also a crazy time, and you need to stay balanced and healthy. And so I think those are important messages that we give during normal times that I think are important for these times too, for our kids and for our families. Because it's, the recommendations by ISB were not to be, all day long on your screen with your teacher. That's not realistic in these times. The attention spans are what they are for the different ages and the level of what they can do. And, I see a little stress in my household. If you have a hard math class and you don't really have contact with your teacher and it's not the same, it's that much harder, in many classes like that. And different students are all different, which you guys know. I mean, you get it. But thanks for trying to balance it out and make it right for each student. And so they can feel successful even this weird year.
One of the other things, and Leah, thank you for bringing this up. I didn't mention it. We just got done with an SEL presentation. And, we have asked our staff to focus specifically on social emotional needs of students on a weekly basis. Maybe not daily, but again, to really intentionally, target instruction and opportunities to pay attention to their mental health needs. We have no idea what this stay-at-home provision is going to do to our psyches, kids, family, domestic scenarios. I mean, it's a challenge right now, and not every kid's in a great environment right now to be learning. Those math problems aren't really a high priority in some of our, homes, and so we know that, and we're certainly going to continue to pay attention to that. I know I sent the board too also a memo from Beth that she did an outstanding job, and I want to thank Matt for working hard on the tech side of this as well to set up a social service and mental health opportunity for our kids to check in through an app. This has been a tool that one of our community members so graciously reached out to us when this all started to happen and provided us a free trial with it over the next 3 months. And all of our mental health staff in the district, which includes our guidance counselors, our social workers, and our school psychologists, are all now going to be enlisted in this app. And we're going to push this out to kids and families. And here in the next week or so, is that right, Beth? I don't want to misspeak. Okay. And they'll be able to access support through that app and be able to make contacts like they would if they walked down the hall and walked into the guidance counselor's office, right? Or to the social worker. We'll be able to do it virtually. Then they could get in a one-on-one, either in a phone call or maybe in a Zoom meeting, and have a conversation about what's happening. But at least we're going to have that framework. And Gavin, thank you so much for making that contact for us in the community with that mental health software for kids. That's been phenomenal.
Perfect.
Beth, anything else you want to add? Did I misspeak or anything I left out?
I don't want to, go on too long about it, but I did just want to say that, like Brian just said, all of our students who already have IEPs or who have social work services they are being, our service providers are reaching out to them on a consistent basis. So that is happening on a consistent basis already. This is not taking the place of that. This is just providing a bigger platform for us to reach all students in the district. Like Brian said, when a student walks down the hall, if they need to go to a social worker, they're able to just walk in and visit with somebody. They don't have that opportunity right now. And another wonderful piece of this is that if a student even goes on to the app, maybe the student goes on 5 or 6 times, but never actually follows through with setting up an appointment with somebody, we can see which student has done that. And that's a cry for help. So we're able to turn around and reach out to that child. So I think it's going to be a good opportunity for us to meet the needs of some of the kids that we might not even know are out there right now. So thank you, Gavin. Raj has been great to work with.
Yeah, and one other quick comment on this topic before I leave it. As the board is aware, we have software that we have tied to all of our student devices in our systems. It's called Gaggle, and we get Gaggle alerts a lot when students are either using phrases or words or photos or things that are inappropriate. I can tell you that Gaggle software is paying off right now. and it will probably escalate when students are isolated. And so we are continuing to monitor that on a regular basis, and that is still in full swing. We get the alerts when something inappropriate is going on, and we're able to head those things off in a proactive way, not in a reactive way after the fact. So just wanted the board to be aware of that.
And Brian, one more piece to that is all of our staff, we have to remember we are all mandated reporters. So if anybody has any concerns at this time, we are still continuing to make calls to DCFS if we have concerns about students that we feel, that calls necessary.
Other questions?
Yeah, I wanted to, this is Barry. First of all, I wanted to thank you, Brian. Your presentation was very thorough. The support staff and to the teachers, everybody doing all the hard work in 220. I'm just so proud to be part of this group. I can tell you, I have 2 daughters who are teachers in other districts, and they just don't have any of the support that you guys are giving your teachers. They were totally unprepared for e-learning, even though they were told they might have to do it. And even now, 3 weeks later, they're still kind of in the dark. So, I know that not all the teachers in our district feel 100% comfortable with what they're doing, but I think the support that you guys are doing is just phenomenal. My question is, I know that a lot of the College Board testing is being postponed. What's happening with AP testing? I feel so sorry for the students that have, worked so hard this year, building up to an AP test in May, and now they don't have their teachers to, give them that hand holding for those last couple of weeks. What are the AP tests going to look like in May? Is it still going on? And I guess maybe Steve, you might have the answer better. I don't know who could answer that, but I'm just wondering what's going to be happening.
I'm going to make a brief comment, then I'm going to let Steve explain it. College Board runs those exams. We don't. All we do is just provide the venue for it. So I'm going to let Steve talk about where the College Board is with AP.
So I would tell you that, listening to some of your comments, College Board has done exactly what many of you have been asking for in terms of trying to strike a balance between the end of the school year where you don't have access to your teacher with content. So to start off with, once the pandemic really hit, and schools started to close right around the beginning of March, they set a policy that they were going to end their new instruction or delivery of new material on essentially March 1st. So most of the content areas, they actually reduced about a chapter or 2 chapters of full material. So essentially, from a Barrington High School perspective, the AP teachers at this point are not having to work through new material and help students with new material. They're actually focused on learning and scaffolding and helping students to clarify misunderstandings. In terms of the tests have changed dramatically. It used to be a pretty long test, depending on the course that you were taking, a multiple choice portion with a free response or a large essay, depending. The tests actually this year are 45 minutes long. They have 2 questions. They are independently timed questions, and students take them at home. They can either write their answers out or they can use their device. If they write it out, they use their cell phone to take a picture of the item that they wrote, and then they send it in. So in terms of the testing dates, they'll be exactly the same as they were before. You can go on AP Central and they'll outline that, but they've staggered the starts. So you can see they move across the time zones. And so it really follows the same format that they have in those first 2 full weeks of May that the tests are given. So students will perform them at home. They'll have 2 questions. Right now, our teachers in AP classes are working to help prepare students for a different format. So we've got a good month of scaffolding learning from prior quarters from the earlier parts of the year, and then also preparing students for that. I've got to sit down in 45 minutes and be prepared for a free response question. So, and that's a different task or a different mode of assessment than many are used to. So hopefully that answers your question, Barry. If a student runs into a situation where there's an illness in the family or an illness for themselves, they can defer the testing into June. So just like in the past, exceptional testing is allowed as well.
I wanted to be specific too on that mental health service app. I just want to give a shout out to Balaji Rajan, who is the going by Raj, who was the parent in our community who gave us the opportunity to use that service with our students, and his company, Candidate, they provided this service for our students. So thank you again to Beth and Matt for doing that. So again, Gavin, thank you for making that connection for us.
I had to jump back to AP for a second for Steve, and I apologize if you already told us this. When will this AP information be provided to the parents and students? Maybe it already has. I don't know.
It already has been through AP. So
okay.
We are actually fielding some specific questions. I think more of the uncertainty is with our junior class right now, reaching out to college counselors, our college counselors. So we've got some frequently asked questions that we're hoping on our SEL days, which are Mondays. That's when our counselors and student services staff interact with students. We've got lessons planned for them in the coming weeks. Next week, the hope is to focus on seniors and provides them some guidance on end of the year types of things. And then we'll work with juniors as well. So we'll have little advisories to share that information, but the information's already out with students.
Yeah, and the College Board has that all posted on their website as well. So I know a lot of our students are very aware of what the circumstances are.
Are there any other questions from the board on this topic?
Yeah, I have a couple. First, I just wanted to say thank you also to the exec council and all of the staff at Barrington 220. I mean, I think it's been said before, but it's just a very difficult time, and appreciate everything that this district and everyone is doing. And a little special shout out to the elementary school parades that went around the neighborhoods when the teachers drove their cars there. It was really nice. Even for those students that are in high school and college, they loved seeing it. And a couple quick questions. I know we're going to come back and talk about Barrington Transportation, but are there any other vendors that we should be talking about?
Dave, I'm going to let you jump in here. I know food service is another area that you and I chatted about as well.
Yeah, food service is really the other group that constitutes the next largest chunk of vendors, and that's something that Leanne has been working very closely with those partners as they have stepped up to try and provide, ensure continuity of food service for our families who need that. And there are some challenges there, and we're continuing to work through that. We may be coming back with some other things in the future, but right now we're still sort of working through based on the volume of meals as we're really getting that settling down, and we're trying to finalize that, and we're working with them to make sure that they're going to be okay. But we may be coming back with something with them.
Okay, great. And then I think the last thing is the seniors and the folks in spring sports. My heart is breaking for them. Could we at least please still get the list of the seniors that we would normally get for graduation?
The list. What list are you talking about, Sandra?
The list of the seniors. So usually we get a list of all the seniors, and we can look through and see whose diploma we might like to hand out and so forth.
Well, we're still going to do some type of graduation. I have no idea what that's going to look like. So the answer is yes. Okay. So we just don't know what it's going to look like yet, or when it's going to happen. Okay.
Right.
When, how, and where. Right, Steve?
Yes. So we're planning graduation, and we're hoping, fingers crossed, that on May 29th at 7, we're walking up the aisle, and that's what we're planning for right now. So we're selecting speakers, and we're engaging students to select the student speaker. That process is happening. We're right on track, right on time with it, And in terms of lists, we'll share all of that with you as we turn the calendar to May. But our plan is to be at Willow Creek at 7 p.m. on the 29th, ready to go.
That's the number one option when you get this information later this week that Steve just shared, right? However, we need to plan for other things. We just do. And we're going to lay out options, okay? And we'll put them in rank order of our preference. That's the number one option, the one that Steve just said, okay?
Of course. And then I guess, and anything we be able to do for spring sports as well?
Well, I'll tell you one thing we won't do. I actually had this question is, how the NCAA provided the spring athletes an extra semester of eligibility. That's not going to happen at the high school level. So just a joke, a little humor here. I feel extremely sad for our students participating actually late winter and then also, into the spring sports. I couldn't imagine when my own son was a baseball player, and if he missed his senior year and varsity baseball, that would have been, tough. It was that was it. And I get it on a personal level. And I know every one of our students that are seniors that are in that type of a scenario, it's whether it's in the arts or whether it's on the field or courts, and it's hard. I mean, it's extremely difficult. So we don't know how that's going to play out. We'll wait to see, that's those unforeseen things yet. The untold story of how all this is going to play out. Whether or not we're able to do anything late spring or summer remains to be seen, but I think it's probably, unlikely that any of those types of activities continue.
It is a little premature. I'm sorry, Brian, but the IHSA sent out a survey to principals today, and they had 4 scenarios. The scenario that we put forward was if we could run a state series from Barrington's perspective, we'd love to run that state series into June. So if we can do it, if the pandemic allows and social distancing allows, that would be our hope, is that we try to get those series in for the kids. So we'll see what happens. Time will tell.
Other questions?
Okay. We will move on then. I'm sure if anyone has questions, they can reach out to Brian outside of the meeting as well.
Yeah, you've all done a great job of that. I appreciate that. And please don't hesitate to let me know. Some things I know about, some things I don't, and so I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I think everybody said this, but it's worth stating one more time. Thank you to everyone who's playing a part in all of this. We know that everyone has a part, no matter how small or large you consider your part. They're all important. So thank you. Okay, our next discussion item is post-referendum discussion. I'll just set this up that at our last meeting, we did not know the outcome of the referendum, but we had asked Brian and his staff, should the referendum pass, if they would provide us a recommendation on a financial advisor and bond counsel. And so we have a memo related to this, and I think I'd like to turn this over to Brian and Dave.
Well, I will briefly say I am so excited to be having this conversation after several years of conversations around this topic, and I just publicly want to say thank you to the community for your support, especially on that unique day, St. Patrick's Day 2020, where this pandemic was all over us and the election continued, and our community just showed up in outstanding support. So thank you. I couldn't pass this opportunity to be able to do that. So I'm going to turn it over to Dave. He's got a short amount of information he's going to share with you, and then we'll go from there.
Great, thank you. Back a little bit over a year ago, is in January of 2019, the board talked about retaining the services of a financial advisor to advise the district as it prepared for a referendum. And at that time, we evaluated the options and had been working with PMA and move forward with an agreement with PMA as the district's financial advisor. This is the same firm that has done other bond issues with the district. And Bob Lewis has been in front of the board on multiple occasions in talking about referendum and other bond issues. Actually, last year, Bob and I did a presentation together to the board just about referendum financing and debt issuance in general. So in taking a look at the market, there's a variety of financial advisors that are active in the Chicago marketplace. PMA is a well-established financial advisor, a leading advisor within the K-12 market. And Bob and the team at PMA have a long history and understanding of Barrington and this referendum, and have done all the background work for us. So with that expertise and also looking at the pricing that they offer, it's their sort of their off-schedule pricing, so it's really great pricing. And I took a look at a couple other deals that have been offered recently in the area as districts have passed referenda, and the pricing is significantly lower than what they're offering. So based on the consideration of some of the other parties who are active in the K-12 marketplace and the experience with PMA, my recommendation is that we continue with the agreement that we already have in place with PMA to use them as the district's financial advisor. If the board chooses to do that, you don't have to do anything in that we already have an agreement in place with PMA. If we'd like to use a different financial advisor, if that's the board's interest, then I can provide the 30-day notice of termination of the existing agreement to PMA as we seek to retain the services of another firm.
Okay. I think it's worth noting that I believe there were 5 board members that actually attended the finance committee meeting as well. We had a more lengthy discussion about this. So I don't want anyone to think that we're not interested in asking a lot of questions, but I'd certainly encourage if someone has an additional question or one that has not been asked to ask. Okay, so I'm not hearing any questions. So how does the board, does the board agree with the administration's recommendation to continue using PMA? How about, yeah, thumbs up so I can see everybody. Is there anyone that disagrees? How about we'll ask that? Okay.
Thank you. The other part of this was bond counsel, and Chapman and Cutler is leading bond counsel in the area for municipal bond issuances, and in addition to K-12 districts, they also represent municipalities, counties, state agencies. They've done lots of deals for Barrington 220 in the past. I would strongly recommend we continue to work with Chapman and Cutler for our bond counsel for this issuance.
Any questions? Is everybody in agreement with the recommendation? Anyone opposed? Okay.
Thank you all. So what we plan on the next meeting for this discussion item, then we will have I believe, Dave, we're going to have the PMA staff available, and we'll start to talk about some of the details and what our bond structure will look like and how it will impact our levies moving forward.
I think, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, for sure. I've already had and mocked up a timeline for what a bond issuance might look like for the district. And I will bring Bob in, and we'll have an opportunity to talk about some of the options related to that in terms of negotiated sale, competitive sale, and timing, and those types of things. So we'll be prepared to share that information with the board to get your feedback.
Okay. Any other questions on this before we move on? Okay. I said I would wait, give people time, and I'm rushing. Okay. There are two other pieces of the post-referendum discussion. There are three pieces to us moving forward. The first one is the bond, the financial advisor and the bond counsel. The other is we need an architect and we need a construction manager. And so in order to help us make these decisions, I asked Dave to give us a little bit of an idea of what it would be like if we would want to use someone other than DLR. So I'll just go back a little bit. Before we embarked upon doing our master facilities plan, the board at that time decided that we should interview architects for that job. And so at the time, Joe and I were on facilities. The board ceded that duty to us. We interviewed 4 or 5 architectural firms, I believe. And then we brought our recommendation to the board, and our recommendation at the time was DLR, and the board approved DLR. We went through the master facilities process, and in conjunction with DLR and our construction manager that we have used in the past, Pepper Construction, came up with the pricing, which then ultimately ended with the board coming up with a package for the referendum. So one of the key things that we communicated and we made a decision on is that we did not take the step to do drawings because we didn't want to invest money that we didn't want to waste money doing that up front. So we still need to do that in order to take care of any of the projects. So we do need an architect and we do need a construction manager. So now I asked Dave if he could come up with a few slides that might help us understand if we were to want to interview and consider architects and or construction managers, what the process might look like. So we don't have to make this decision tonight, but I just wanted us to have a flavor for what it might be like. So I'm going to give it to you, Dave.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to work to share my screen here. Just give me a moment to try and get this set. I am not, well, okay, those are my kids. That's not what I was going to share with you, so hang on. All right, sorry for the adjustment there. Can you see this all right?
Yes.
Okay, all right, great. Penny, you said a few slides. I took that to mean fewer than 17. So we should be good here with this presentation. It actually is short. I just have a couple slides for you. So the first thing is that the selection of these kinds of services are actually governed by statute. So there is the Local Government Professional Service Selection Act, which stipulates how it works for a variety of government agencies, including school districts. And what that lays out is that we actually can't go out and do a competitive bid for these types of services. That's not the type of process that we can go through. We have to go through a qualification-based selection process. There are 2 exceptions that go along with this qualification-based selection. The first is if we have a satisfactory existing relationship for services. So that would be, for example, if the board wants to continue to work with DLR, that's an existing firm that we have a relationship with, same thing with Pepper Construction. So we can move forward with them because of the exception in the statute that allows us to continue working with someone that we have an existing relationship with. The other exception is that if we have a bona fide emergency or a small project below $25,000, neither of which is applicable for our referendum, and neither, quite frankly, really matters because the first exception exists for DLR and Pepper if the board were to choose to go that direction. If we were going to do a selection process, it's sort of like going out for bid, like just a normal bid that we would do, in that we prepare a solicitation document, we publish notice of the solicitation in a newspaper, we set a specific time and date for responses to be due to our solicitation. There it changes a little bit in that it's not really like a bid in that we don't actually ask for prices. So during this part of the process, we can't ask companies, well, what do you charge? So tell us about yourself and what you can do for us and what your fees are. We have to stop with, tell us about yourselves and what you can do for us. Once we get those proposals in, we review the responses, and typically, so the first pass through of that happens administratively, and then a smaller subset of those are reviewed, and it's common that there might be an invitation for a small number of firms to do a presentation. It's usually to a committee that includes a variety of interested parties. It might include a board member to administrative team and some others. And then once that's all done, there's that team or committee would then rank order at least the top 3 firms. And it could be more than the top 3, but it's at least, per the statute, at least the top 3. Once that list is in place, then the board can enter into negotiations with the top ranked firm with respect to a contract, and that contract would then include pricing. So now that you've got who you think is most qualified, now you can start to negotiate price. If you don't reach an agreement, then you go to the next most highly ranked firm. And if you go through your top 3 and then you find out don't have a contract with any of those, then you can go on to the next group. So you can rank who would be your 4th, 5th, and 6th. So that's that actually is the end of that process. So Penny, I did try to make it really short and even actually come in fewer than 3 slides, but I'd be happy to answer any questions from board members about this process.
I think I heard a collective sigh, even though people were muted when you said 17 slides. Questions for Dave?
Yeah, so my first question is, since you can't initially do bidding based on price, how do you know if you're getting a good deal? Let's say that the first firm sounds spectacular. You have nothing to base his or her bid on. So how do you know that you're doing the best for your taxpayers?
Well, the way the process works is you look for the firm with the best qualifications to meet your professional service needs. And then based on that, once you've ranked them and you've got your top 3, now you talk with the first one and you try to come to terms, which would revolve around the price. And if you aren't getting the best deal or what you think, or at least is a good deal, then you move on to the next one. So it's not a scenario by statute where you can say, hey, first 3, give me all of your prices, and now I'm going to look for the best of those. You just really have to try and negotiate the most favorable deal that you can and determine whether that's acceptable or not. Now, I can tell you that business managers talk, and so what I'm able to do is to find out in talking with my colleagues what the going rate is for architecture service or construction manager services and get an idea about what's happening at some other districts. So that's a way for us to be able to read what's happening in the K-12 marketplace. But there's not the ability per the statute to compare the top group.
That's exactly right, as Dave said. You know, Barry, I think the bottom line here is Dave and I will network with colleagues and make sure that we're getting a fair and competitive price for the services that are being rendered after we make the determination of that the firm that we want to use. Okay. And if they're not able to get to a point that we're comfortable with the fees, then we move on. And that's happened before. If, you know, depends on the circumstances.
Based on my opinion, obviously, The facilities committee and the board had done a tremendous amount of due diligence on the architectural firm that we have been working with over the last couple of years. And if they give us a fair price based on kind of your back-ended homework, I would be fine with that.
Angela, were you going to say something too?
I was going to say pretty much what Gavin said, but in the reverse. I was going to say, do you have an idea as far as your experience with other business managers as to DLR's competitiveness with their pricing?
DLR is a well-respected firm in the K-12 market, and the pricing is really going to vary based on the kinds of projects that you're working. So I don't have that information as to where they are. I can tell you that other districts have gone through the process, and DLR gets a fair bit of work, as do other firms. There may be some that are more price competitive and some that are less price competitive, but that's not, what we would have to do is enter into the conversation with them around our referendum work and get their proposal, and I would work with Brian to vet that out to ensure that's a fair price. I know it probably didn't exactly answer your question.
No, I understand.
For the scope of the work that we're looking at here with this, $147 million, question that we're going to launch into over the next several years, there's probably only a handful of firms, when I say handful, 6 or less, in the Chicago market that could handle the scope of this, meaning having a, team in their office to be able to do all the work. We're going to be asking engineering services as well as, design work. And, it's a small group, quite frankly. And, DLR is one of them, in my opinion. As Dave said, the same thing.
Okay, to the rest of the group, Gavin and Angela have made a suggestion. How can the rest of the board support that? Is there anyone opposed? Sorry, we're not all collaborating as normal.
Sorry, I'm not clear what it is, Penny.
Well, I'm sorry.
What it is.
Thanks for asking. Gavin and Angela too suggested that perhaps we just move forward working with DLR as we have been and keep DLR as our architect. Am I saying that correct?
My only recommendation to that would be is if we deem it a fair bid. Clearly, I think DLR has invested a tremendous amount of energy within our district, and I think they're best equipped to kind of take us through this process. But if it is deemed an unfair kind of expense for such, I think that I would have a different opinion.
That's fair. I'm glad you clarified.
I now have just one tiny little thing to throw out there. Brian, you and I talked today a little bit about how there may be some differences as far as moving forward. We have a large unknown ahead of us with regard to resuming school, and will it be, whenever it is that we resume, will it be kind of business as usual, or will there be some significant changes? And I think that you mentioned tonight that if we were to resume school before the end of this school calendar year, we wouldn't be able to resume as business as usual. There's a lot of different considerations that would need to be taken into effect as far as distancing or whatever you hear coming out of the governor's office. Looking at the next year, is there a potential, and I'm asking a question that I know no one can answer, is there a potential that there is going to be a significantly different way that we deliver education going forward? And, I don't like to redo work. I like to, if we have a good work product from DLR, I would like to stay with them. The only caveat that I'm giving, and I don't even know how to say it or what exactly I mean, but I don't want to be stuck to a plan if we need to differ from that plan going forward because of some new unforeseen circumstances when we developed that plan initially. And I think that there probably is kind of a natural, if you've already worked something up, then you believe that it's the right way to do it. So I don't know exactly. I'm just
I get it. Obviously the events of the last 3 weeks, and probably for the next 3 and many more, we're gonna have some new learning opportunities here, right? And instruction might look different. If you remember one thing, when we worked with DLR in the master facility work, we only did concepts. We did not do drawings. So the real work gets into putting this down into real scenarios. Let me give you an example. The additions to our middle schools. Those are going to be significant. They're going to be new educational learning spaces at both of those schools, right? So the design in that work is going to be possibly be very different than a traditional classroom scenario that we know, right? And I think that's our opportunity to do some of that. And then that will go into this, because here's the way this works. If we engage an architect, whoever it is, they meet with staff, teachers, they'll meet with kids, they'll meet with administrative, principal, administrative team, and they will sit down and do a whole process and create a design that's going to meet the instructional needs now and into the future, if that makes sense. So we're best of our knowledge. So we have not done that work.
Well, in that regard, we have in some ways, though, right? I mean, DLR did, investigate these issues and interviewed and really put in some extensive work. And I don't want to see that redone. My only point is, if now large instructional spaces are not a recommended means of delivering education, or conversely, small that's my only, and I know I'm not saying it very well, but that's my hesitation with kind of going with a firm. I don't want to see another firm redo the work, because I think DLR did a really good job. But if our needs or our mandates suddenly change, I just would want to make sure that we're with a firm that is willing to move in a fresh direction.
So maybe I can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
When I think of our plans, what those drawings, those concepts that were put forth to the community with square footage, boxes here and there, attached to middle schools, elementary schools, the front of the high school. That's all those were square footage. And it was in order to accomplish an educational goal. So for example, at the middle schools, we wanted to get rid of the mobiles. So what would it take to get rid of the mobiles? And then that goal drove the rest of the conversation. And so I think if our goal is still to improve safety and security in our schools, get rid of the mobiles, then as long as we're still doing those things, and we can, I have no preconceived notion about what any of these additions look like, to be honest, as long as they accomplish those goals. I mean, that's one of the things we said all along, was concept. These drawings are square footage, and that's how it was priced too, by square footage. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, and Angela, I understand exactly where you're going, and trust me, no matter what architect we would use, I would have that exact conversation with them. Hey, we've got some new learning going on right now in the education K-12 market, right? We just do. And there's going to be some huge conversations around what's the best instructional space. What's it look like, right? And I do believe one concept that DLR shared with us in the master facility plan that will still be in play is flexible space. Flexibility to make it small, make it large, and don't lock us into some, physical structure. Give us designs that are going to allow flexibility. That, in my opinion, is the biggest piece of this whole thing, which they did have as a major concept in all their thinking when we put this master plan together.
And I think too that no matter who we end up sitting down with to go on this adventure with, we're going to have the same conversations.
Good point. Thank you.
Mike here. One other point related to the same issue that Angela is raising. there's significant economic impact forecasted due to this crisis. And you know, we talked earlier about material costs, for example, rising in the year that it took between the first and second attempts on the referendum, for example. We talked about labor costs rising. That could be different looking out forward now for the next year or two or three. And I think we just need to be aware that the cost quotes that we were hearing about for the projects we were looking at, we may be able to do better. We might have some pricing power in the new economy, whatever that looks like. So that's all.
Well, that's a conversation, no matter which architect we choose to go with. We would, so Dave and I would engage in that conversation with them and talk about what the fee structure looks like, bring it back to the board and review it. Absolutely.
Just because we have.
With construction, a lot of that is publicly bid as well. So we would always be pursuing the best price possible for the work that we wanted done. And if there are economic conditions that change, that have prices lower, we should be able to take advantage of that through the public bidding process.
And I think we should watch the timing of that as this unfolds. We are obviously watching it closely from the education perspective, but from the economic perspective as well.
So we have, go ahead.
So when this conversation started, I wasn't sure if the board was being asked to go with who we know or to look towards looking for other people. Just to clarify where we're going. And if we're talking about keeping DLR and keeping Pepper, since I wasn't here when we connected, when we first started this project, just a question of, are the same people, would we be working with the same people that we were working with that we liked before with DLR and with Pepper? And are the companies basically the same? I'm assuming that they are, obviously.
So good question, Leah. The purpose of this conversation tonight was to educate the board on what it would be like to, because we have some choices to make. We have some decisions, and the decision could be go out and interview new architects. We still might land on DLR, or continue down the path with DLR. So we need to make that decision. And then we need to make the decision, same parameters around a construction manager. And so tonight, I think our other option on both is to, and this is something the board did with the bond counsel and the financial advisors, is we could also ask the administration if they would like to bring us their recommendation. So, we have kind of had three paths. I wasn't looking for us to necessarily make a decision tonight. I mean, Gavin and Angela kind of started, that ball rolling as far as DLR goes. And so I thought I would open that up to the group, and hey, if everyone thought that was the case, we could check that off our list too. So I guess at this point, I'm going to throw out, how does the board feel about us asking the administration to bring us a recommendation at our next meeting on both the architect and the construction manager? I see it. Wait, is there anyone opposed? Okay, I see most thumbs up. Is there anyone opposed to this? Seeing none. Okay. We would like a recommendation for both the architect and construction manager at our next meeting, please.
Penny, I'm sorry, Mike, clarifier question on that.
Sure.
Are we asking them to recommend either going, per the exceptions that Dave laid out, those choices, either going out to bid or going with one of the existing relationships? Is that what we're asking them for?
Well, yes.
Okay.
For both.
I have a little homework to do on both routes, and we're going to have to vet that out a little bit. We didn't do anything up to this point until we had a board discussion on it. Okay, so yeah, we're going to have to do some homework between now and the 21st. Okay.
The other thing I had asked Dave about in anticipation, I wasn't sure how we would go on this, but he has a much more detailed memo ready to send our way if we want him to on the route of going down the interview path. Should I just have him hold that for right now, or should he send it?
Well, it sounds like it's going to be part of the next conversation, regardless of the recommendation, right? I mean, I'd like to know why, if we go one way or the other.
Okay.
So yes, I think seeing it in advance might be helpful.
Okay. Dave, I guess I'm not sure that I adequately explained what you had prepared, but feel free to just incorporate or send the separate document. If anything else, it'll just be informative for the board.
It was a draft. We started some things, and then we just waited for this conversation to see which direction the board wanted to go.
I didn't know how much detail you wanted on the path of interviews and things like that. So, okay, I think that we can put a bow on this discussion if that's okay with everybody. Steve wants to erase it. I see him over there. Okay, let me go back to the agenda here. Agenda items for the 21st, we will get to public comment. I think we have enough. Does anyone want to add anything to it? I don't think we need to go through all of these. Does anyone want to add any agenda items?
I will just say we will obviously continue this conversation, very similar to what it was tonight. I probably will also continue to have a, COVID-19 update as well.
Okay. And then before we do the confidentiality closed session minutes, I'm going to open public comment. Again, I have received, I did receive a few emails, and just for the viewing public, this was just a way for us to kind of experiment this time with public comment. And so I'm not sure it'll look like this in the future, but anyway, so I will read into our record. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I have 5 letters that I received. The first was from Debbie Hassman. I received this on Friday, April 3rd. It says, I'm an essential employee working as a nurse practitioner at Good Shepherd Hospital ER. On days I work 12 hours. My husband is also working. I'm having a hard time helping my children complete the learning given I am still working outside the home. Between my middle schooler Schoologies not allowing us to access assignments and needing supervision to make sure assignments are completed. He is also in extended math and without a teacher teaching. He is struggling to understand the concepts which are above my math ability as well. My 3rd grader needs hand holding and actually teaching of the concept lessons to get the assignments done. And back and forth between all these apps and online resources is time consuming. So my concern, or what I would love to see, is more online presence of the teachers. If they could spend more time teaching the curriculum virtually. Why are private schools like Holy Family teachers online between 9 and 12 teaching curriculum virtually, and we are not? And we are a top-rated district, and I've had barely any interaction virtually with the teachers. Would be nice to see math and reading being taught, and in middle school, all subjects, versus us watching a video or going to a website to try to figure it out. Distance learning can improve or can incorporate face-to-face over the internet in this day and age. Thank you for taking the time to listen. The next is from Naveed Haidari. I received this on Sunday. My son is in 7th grade at Prairie Middle School. Since the quarantine, his schedule has been very erratic, and I feel it is limiting his ability to learn. I am concerned about the lack of structure provided by the school system. There is no scheduled classes to attend online, and because of this, he's losing interest. I fear the quality of his education is greatly diminishing during the last quarter of his 7th grade year. I feel a more scheduled lesson plan would be best, such as several hours of direct teaching instruction every day at the same time, with breaks for lunch and guided PE. The current system in place is just not working. I need to know of any options to ensure he is getting adequate instruction and education. I'm sure this is not just a personal note, but a common issue all parents are dealing with at this time, and I would like to hear your thoughts about the scheduled parenting meeting. I believe that they thought this was a parenting meeting. The next is from Meredith Milkey, received on Sunday, and I hope I'm pronouncing these names correctly. I apologize if I'm not. Hello, I'm unable to make the board meeting as I'm working. I would like to know more information on the bus transportation. We pay taxes on buses and they are not being used. I would be comfy knowing the drivers are getting paid because they have families and needs to be paid. And it's not fair. It's not their fault. I'm sorry. It's not their fault with social distancing. However, it is going around due to the bus company being private. Thief salaries are not guaranteed to be paid in full. Are they contacted with the school district or privately? Please advise if this information is correct and what steps could be taken to ensure drivers are getting paid, since taxes are still being paid. This is the time when we need to be looking out for our community and banding together. Two more. This one I received today from Scott Warman. Hi, just a brief consideration / request, asking that we, Barrington, live up to our obligation to the school bus company, contract, and continue payment during this most critical time. It simply is the right and honest thing to do. Glad to see a recent vote for additional school funds. So with this in mind, let us live us to the contract. Thanks and stay safe. And then the last one from Anastasia Simoncelli, received on Friday, April 3rd. I'm contacting you as a parent of Grove Avenue School who is concerned about the quality of e-learning program. While I understand the difficulties we face in providing a comparable education to an in-person setting, I do believe there's a great deal of room for improvement. Mainly a 30-minute Zoom meeting in the morning followed by an assignment list that is insufficient assistance and supervision from the teachers. There are many other school districts in Illinois who are providing hours and hours of daily live teacher instruction that mirrors the in-person experience they are missing at this time. Some of these schools include Holy Family, Hoffman Estates, and Chicago. Our district officials and teachers are being paid full salaries at a time when many parents are not. We expect a high quality education and our teachers to be online teaching our children. From the parent side, there are those of us who are working from home and expected to sit and guide our children the entire day, moving back and forth to multiple children. In addition, we have parents who are essential workers and are out of the house, and those students are expected to be guided by another caregiver. The district anticipated e-learning coming almost a month ago. After 2 weeks of e-learning, it is time to improve the product you are pushing out. We expect more from Barrington 220, and our children deserve the best from all aspects of the curriculum. Our district constantly touts its high standards and status within Illinois and nationally, but is not living up to the standard within the e-learning realm. So I do want to say one thing. Every time I received one of these emails, since it wasn't, during the meeting, where the opportunity existed, I responded and I asked if I could forward the emails to Dr. Harris. And in most cases, the person who was authoring the email agreed. And I do believe that Brian and or teachers, principals have gotten back to most of the people already, especially in the areas of instruction. So I'll just say that. And with that, I'll close public comment. Is there a motion to approve confidentiality of closed session minutes?
Evan, so moved.
Leah, second.
Got that, Janine? Okay, roll call, please.
Okay. Leah Collister-Lazari,
Yes.
Mike Shackleton,
Yes.
Angela Wilcox,
Yes.
Barry Altshuler. Barry Altshuler. Could you unmute Barry?
Barry, you're muted.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
There you are.
Okay.
Sandra Bradford,
Stay home, stay safe. Yes.
Penny Casimir,
Yes.
Gavin Newman.
Yes.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Leah,
So
so moved.
Second.
Sandra, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you to everybody for being patient tonight and for helping us make this a productive evening. So
Send
Thank
me any feedback for this, just so we can do it better on the 21st, okay? Thank you.
yeah, be well.
Good night.
Good night.